In the lead-up to Anzac Day commemoration, students from Darwin High School were asked about their views on war. The ABC presents the short documentary titled The War in Darwin, A Youth Perspective.
This is our school, Darwin High School. While it was officially opened on this site in July 1966, in reality, students were here as early as October 1963. The school council refused to have a public opening until the Commonwealth Government provided air conditioning for the site.
We are a few of the 1,400 students who study here. We have lots of modern facilities, including a great gymnasium, drama and performance areas, loads of computers and a brand new science block.
As well as those modern installations, there are also links with the past. The school was built on the site of the former Vestey's Meat Works. That dates back to 1917, but a little later many soldiers were based here in a huge 4-storey building.
Military historian Bob Alford is here with us today. Bob, can you explain this link with the war years?
Well, the barracks that the military used here from 1932 were the old single men's quarters to Vestey's Meat Works. And the Darwin detachment came here in 1932 to fix the guns at East Point, and then later the Darwin Garrison and Darwin Mobile Force. And of course the RAAF was also quartered here.
So what were the day-to-day lives of the soldiers like?
Well, they would have been fairly routine. They would have been up early in the morning parade, and then they would have been assigned to their normal duties or to work parties, and then back at lunchtime, and then in the afternoon the same routine, and then back in the evening for mess.
What was it like living in the barracks?
Well, to some it was quite primitive. They weren't used to it, but it was also quite dangerous. There were open lift shafts, and they were also storing explosives and other items in the basement and on some of the floors.
It must have been pretty rough. Where did they get their food from?
Well, most of the food they got was in ration form, and that was bulk issued. It was very, very poor, and of course a lot of it dated back to World War I. It was mainly bully beef, rice, sardines and tomato sauce and biscuit. And of course they did get fresh bread every day. They had a bakery here, but at the same time it was very monotonous and they had to supplement their diet in some way. And of course one of the ways that the troops are able to supplement their diets was by erecting fish traps along the coastline here.
It must have been difficult. How did they go about constructing the fish traps?
Well, most were just as they went, basically, of local materials, but obviously this one's a much more formal design. It's been set out in straight lines and with the opening facing the sea.
What materials did they use?
Well, mostly it was local rock with bamboo and bush timbers, but they also got a lot of materials either from the military itself, in this case with the star pickets and tent pegs, but they scrounged a lot of materials from the bombed out buildings in Darwin.
Did they catch many fish?
Well, they caught quite a few fish, including the odd crocodile, of course, but they were able to eat most of them that day fresh. They smoked some, and of course they sold a lot to the other units in the area. But the catch was, of course, that once the officers found out they were supplementing their diet, then the actual official ration list went down.
Bob, just near the school are these huge tanks. Could you tell us a bit about them?
Yeah, well, these are the flotation buoys from the anti-submarine boom net that was strung across Darwin Harbour during World War II.
Where was the boom net?
Well, initially it was strung out from East Point and it ran about 3 kilometres into the harbour to the west. And then in about 1942-43 they extended it across to where Mandorah is now, which was then West Point. And that made it 5.89 kilometres long, so that was the longest in the world at the time.
Did it require much maintenance?
It was a continual maintenance cycle. They had a big boom defence depot down at Fort Hill below Government House, and that was purpose built for the Navy, and they did a continual cyclical maintenance program of all the netting. So they drag one part of the net in, maintain that, and then take it out again and release it on these flotation buoys and also on towers, both at East Point and at Mandorah.
Just a short distance from the high school is another sort of feature, a slit trench. And the sign says, if you lie in this trench, you'll get a pretty good view of the coast. This slit trench was built during World War II so the soldiers could lie protected while defending the coast during the expected Japanese land invasion.
Bob, how would it have been lying in the trench?
Well, it would have been quite uncomfortable, but in this case, this trench would have been a lot deeper, probably about chest high. It would have had sandbags arranged at the front, and the troops would have been in there with their rifles and possibly a machine gun.
We've never been affected by war, so it's difficult for us to imagine what it would have been like.
So many people died so we could live in safety.
The 14th Anti-Aircraft Association donated this banner to acknowledge the interests of Darwin High School, and each year the association endows a history prize.
The 14th Heavy Anti-Aircraft Battery was stationed at the Oval on the Esplanade, at Fanny Bay and just north of Rapid Creek at a site called McMillan's. On the 19th of February 1942, the Japanese attacked Darwin with 188 carrier-borne aircraft. It was during the raid that the gunners on the Oval had to set their fuses at the lowest possible setting so that they could engage the bombers which were attacking the shipping on the harbour. It was during this time that they claimed to have shot down a Val dive bomber, which they say crashed into the harbour.
I was part of a team of Darwin High School divers who were looking for the wreckage of the plane. We spent quite a few hours searching, but so far haven't found it.
There are many other reminders of the war in and around Darwin.
We even have this at Darwin High School. It's the casing of a bomb dropped in the Darwin post office in 1942.
If more people knew about these things, perhaps they might think more about the tragedy of war.
If more young people understood about war, maybe they wouldn't turn to violence to solve their problems.